All right, welcome to today's episode of Industry Innovators, where we sit down with some of the sharpest minds in tech. I'm your host, Aaron Park. This episode is sponsored by Atomic Consulting. Atomic partners with tech companies and agencies to break away from outdated and time-consuming lead gen methods like networking and referrals, which often feel like wishful thinking rather than strategy. Our battle-tested and data-driven client acquisition system brings you ideal clients without chasing or guesswork, just predictable compounding growth. And now, without further ado, let's get started. Today, we have a very special guest, Joe Dunlow, CEO of B2I Technologies. B2I has spent 25 years helping public companies run modern, compliant investor relations websites, real-time data widgets and plugins, press releases, webcasts, and creative services without clunky subdomains or iframes. Joe, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right. So, Joe, to get us started, would you care to share a bit about your journey and your current role and how it kind of all fits into the bigger picture at B2I Technologies?
Sure. So from the beginning, I started B2I as a programmer, probably the lowest rung on the ladder in the corporate ladder in the beginning, 25 years ago. Yeah, over the years, I was able to pick up the concept of investor websites and our role as a agency providing the website and really using technology to help in streamlining operations and the workflow.
Awesome. Yeah. And then I guess for listeners who are newer to hearing about B2I and I guess what you do, if you were to, I guess, explain it in terms of plain English, who would you say you serve primarily and what problems are you solving for them?
So primarily our target prospect client is going to be probably the micro to small cap company, a publicly traded company. So on a US stock market. It doesn't have to necessarily be a US company. There are what's called ADRs, where are foreign located companies that are trading on the US stock market. So we can facilitate them as well. Specifically, there's certain pieces of information that they all like to, or that's needed to be put on their website. And this information is things like the SEC filings. This is where they're filing with the governing body in the US for releasing information. Also, press releases. These pieces of information are what's called material disclosure. Anything that can affect the stock price, it's going to be required to be materially disclosed. And that means in a public forum, it could be on their website, which is now approved. In the past, it wasn't. We saw that transition. But so we're facilitating with bringing that information onto their website, guiding that area of their website to specifically streamline investors getting to the information that is of value so they can look at the fundamentals of the company, whether it be a stock analyst or a retail investor, institutional investor. All of them are going to go to the corporate website if they have a seriousness in investing in that company. They want to get the company's direct message, the message directly from the CEO of their spend, their investment opportunity, and usually what's going to be driving the factors of growth for the company, whether it be profitability or what have you.
Yeah. And then I guess I know you emphasize also like flexible integrations. What's kind of the most common aha moment when a team realizes they don't actually need to rip and replace like their whole corporate website?
Yeah, that I can really speak to because that's our latest transition of our software. We started back in 2000 with a software as a service. It was the first software as a service in this industry. Everyone was still hand coding HTML websites, very laborious, time intensive process, slow to get changes rolled out, things like that. So when we rolled out this first software as a service, we were really changing the game here and using technology first to approach a problem that had a real constraint for the companies to make updates in real time. So that was in 2000. About 10 years ago, I saw the opportunity to change this offering up and change it from a software as a service to a data as a service. This is our more modern approach of building blocks, if you will, of these, the SEC filings, as I mentioned earlier, press releases, stock data, the email sign up, all these different types of data. There's quite a few of these. Some of these are automatically updated from data feeds. Some of them rely on our team or the company to update and then be reflected into the website. So we changed that software as a service to this data as a service to where these data building blocks can be placed within the website anywhere and have different formats to adhere to the company's website to make it blend in really well. So that's really the aha moment for where we are now and how this product, this service has transitioned to something unique.
No, that's awesome. And then I know you also offer like a complimentary review. What are the types of like common patterns that you typically see over and over again?
I would say it's a lack of focus on the ultimate goal of what the website is there for to begin with. And when I say the website, I mean the investor website specifically. Sometimes it may just be a section within their website, but nonetheless, there is a goal there, and that's to bring these pieces of information all together. As I mentioned, maybe a message from the CEO to bring that investment opportunity, but there's certain pieces of information that these investors are looking for. And on that overview landing page, that's the opportunity to present all of these pieces of information, maybe say the latest three press releases, the latest financials, the stock data, of course, a sign up to that email notification. And the investment opportunity, nowadays video is so common on a corporate website. We really employ our clients to use that media mechanism because it's a faster way to engage the prospect investor. No one wants to read your entire investment thesis. They want to hear the story directly from the source. So getting that video out there, it's a critical component that we feel is able to bring a really personalized story of approach of that investment opportunity right to the heart of the matter.
Yeah, no, that all makes sense. I know we briefly talked about this before, even the podcast, right? Where content is like the best form, or not necessarily the best form, but the most common form these days of how people are getting their information, right?
Easy to
So
consume. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. So, congratulations first off of, operating for the past 25 years. And I know you probably have so much different things going on as the CEO. I guess what does your typical day kind of look like for you? Like balancing, the product decisions, the strategy, client support, partnerships, road mapping. So kind of give me a breakdown of what that kind of looks like for you at this time.
Yeah, sometimes I just think of it as a bowl of spaghetti. And I mean, you really think about the marketing, overseeing the messaging, some sales tactics. Yeah, like I say, product development. I'm still a developer. I still run the development for the company. And even putting support mechanisms in place for our support team, making sure that there's a easy manner for answers to be found within our product, because we do have a portal for the content to be managed, and we do allow our clients to go into that portal and update that content if they want to drive it. Our team also drives it and updates it. But one easy way to describe a way that we facilitated that is making it so every page within our portal has a help video. That helps the client that's going in there trying to learn the platform. It also helps our support team, say a new member that's getting up to speed. So there's little things like that. That decision it was such a small decision with a massive impact in our operations. And what I found that sometimes these small decisions, and sometimes it's even small effort. I mean, it literally took us maybe 30 minutes to an hour to make that possible. And it just has such profound impact. Sometimes you really got to not try to overcomplicate things. I mean,
Mhm.
it's in reflecting back on our history of the product advancement. Same scenario when we would have talks with a client or maybe an IR firm, a partner. We constantly try to engage them because we could learn firsthand what their problems, with what issues were they dealing with day to day. And being a software provider developer, we could easily inject our software into some of these areas that would drastically cut out their workload, simplify and just streamline that whole process. And they had no clue that it was possible. And we didn't have a clue that they needed it until we just spoke to them. And sometimes we would have a feature implemented again within 30 minutes or an hour. Sometimes before we even got off the phone with them, we could have things just changed up to make such a drastic impact in their operations.
Yeah, no, I think it's also because a lot of people are kind of going through this analysis paralysis moment too, because there's so much noise around us, right? With technology, like there's always new solutions, new technologies, new tools always coming up. There's just so much going on that it just causes them to kind of be paralyzed in like what to directionally do next, right? So it's awesome that you also do a lot of the consulting in terms of understanding what's their actual pain point. And you also mentioned how your portal had like how you added video content so that's also easily digestible. And I'm assuming that's where you kind of got the idea of recommending it to your clients as well. Because I remember before a lot of websites would post a lot of like knowledge base type of pages where they have just a ton of a dictionary of information.
Right.
And most often, I don't think a lot of people actually go through and read all of that, right?
Well,
So,
I will say we had employed that, of course, and it's just one thing. It's not just a matter of finding what you're looking for; it's also maintaining it. For us being a developer and consistently rolling out updates, new products, new features, yeah, it's a challenge just to maintain that database as well. Where the way we implemented it, every page can have a video, and it's so simple to create and add. Like I say, creating with an AI tool nowadays, we definitely found that AI offers some wonderful advancements and simplistic mechanisms for creating these videos, even dubbing over, our voice to where it's a more
mhm.
consistent voice and manner of speaking in all videos. There's a lot to be said for that because, I'm from the South kind of, and I still got that Southern twang, and I hate my voice, of course, on any video. So all our team members are like that. But just leveraging these pieces of technology, and AI was a beautiful scenario that it could just come in. We didn't really have to think a lot about it because it was very apparent of how it would fix that problem.
Right. And then kind of looking at a bird's eye view of, I guess, the investor relation and corporate comms sort of space. I guess what major industry trends or shifts are you kind of seeing in that space right now?
It's such a dinosaur of an industry, to be honest. It's considered a cost center because when you think about investor relations, there's no revenue driven from that. Now, from the beginning, I will say that we have approached it in a little different perspective. So our founder, I'm not the founder, we did have a founder that was a Wall Street analyst. So this is where the real core of our story came from, was he saw the opportunity to create a software again back in 2000 that was able to help companies to put out their own guidance. So if they could put out their own guidance, there wasn't enough analysts to cover all companies. So it still helped them to get that message out there, that guidance out there. And it's really the best approach because it's from the company. You're not having a third party weigh in on what could affect a company's performance. You can hear directly from the CEO. They know what's impacting their business. So we found that was the opportunity to bring this software. But then we found that there was other areas that there was other pain points that this software was able to fulfill. And that's really where the story blossomed into so much more than we even envisioned, especially as technology was able to continue to progress and allow us to do more. So there was a lot to take in this approach, but at the same time, we had all the tools over the days that, or I should say years that we've been working on it. It's just been a matter of staying up to tune on what's available. I mean, now, again, looking at current day AI, we're looking at how we can leverage AI. And there's a few roles that we've already found, some that are more easily to implement, whether it be on our process side of identifying potential partners, identifying clients, but then even in performing some of the work, we're gradually looking at what we can do there. There's definitely a lot of, I would say, hesitation on implementing it too much into content going onto the corporate website. CEOs and the corporate communications are going to be very specific on the language that's used. So we're not able to fully capitalize on AI in content generation or even summarizing. We got a delicate space here to deal with in leveraging it in production. Now, as far as supporting our software development roles and as far as helping to expedite our development, yeah, it's used everywhere. So we're just trying to leverage AI right now because it makes sense. As you mentioned already on the call, there's a lot out there. It's easy to get lost in the space, and I feel we've definitely got lost a couple of times just with the marketing stuff out there and sales. There is a lot out there, and but it's gradually becoming to where you can identify what's going to be valuable for your business and what's working. Unfortunately, that's just the starting place you have to go. It's actually easy to move from there, but finding something that you can feel like you have a foothold in it. To me, that's where we are right now. We're just barely approaching that in our marketing and sales efforts.
Yeah, yeah. No, we kind of talked about like all of the noise out there, and like a crazy number I'm just gonna throw out is I don't have the exact, but I believe they said in the past 2 years, there's been over 40,000 different AI companies that have emerged, right? That's just
Right.
wild to think about. And how is a single human gonna navigate that landscape of 40,000 different tools? And a lot of them, kind of do the same thing. Like even just generative AI, we know what the big players are, right? But there's still more out there. And, they're kind of creeping up. I think like 2 years ago, obviously OpenAI was like the biggest one, like the biggest player. But now you're seeing some of the other ones kind of creep up. There's like the Chinese one with DeepSeek. There's also, with Perplexity for research, so all of these are coming up. And needless to say, like that's also with a lot of the marketing and sales tools that are available out there too. Like from the sales side, there's like AI sales call analyzers to help their sales teams in terms of coaching. That way, like a senior sales rep doesn't have to sit down and coach all their junior representatives and look at the recording and tell them like the same thing over and over again,
Right.
essentially, right? And there's like so many out there. So how do you navigate, out of the 100 sales analyzer tools, like which one is the best for your specific use case, right? And the same with the marketing. There's a bunch of tools out there that helps with outreach. And it's like which one should you use with outreach, right? Which one works the best? Which one in terms of the pricing makes the most sense for us, right? So there's like so much that's kind of going on behind that I figure like at least from my end, a lot of the times when I'm talking to people, it's like, yeah, I want to know what you're using because we're using this, but comparing like, what types of results they're seeing, right? So what would you say, and we kind of alluded to, you're using AI today, especially when it comes to like the development side that's helping you speed up a lot of things. And then you also alluded to that you're now getting started and ramping up with the marketing and sales initiatives, right? What would you say right now has been working very well for you in terms of like that growth? And then on the flip side, what's been like super frustrating or challenging for you?
Well, you've already nailed the challenging part is identifying the product and the service that's able to really work with your workflow or your process. As far as success, I would say is the identifying the people that you should contact. I've seen can actually give you names, emails, all the contact information for company members. That's to us, since we are very specific on who we talk to, that's going to help us out tremendously. And then that would be like the identifying as far as putting the next piece in place for the outreach and a drip campaign. Yeah, that's always helpful to be able to automate that stuff and take suggestions. Nowadays AI can work on your wording, your approach, maybe look at other scenarios that's been positive and leverage that same approach. So we have to trust in that to some degree, even though it may not be our industry that it was positive on, it's still a human approach. So that's one thing that we are learning, that sometimes we can't inject our own perspective because if there's already tried and true ways that has been identified, we just have to trust in that. So that has been a hard part for us to adhere to, but at the same time, it's one area that saves so much time and our own effort that, I would say that's definitely a positive attribute for using these advanced tools. Yeah, that's just been my experience so far with the sales and marketing side of it. And I'm sure there's more to come out with this. This game is very early right now. I can't wait to see exactly how it evolves. And, I can imagine a day when you just say the old Star Trek adage is computer compute, and it does it. Because that was a line in Star Trek I remember, and it was so funny that he brought it into the, our day and time, and it just didn't work. So I think we're on that precipice. I think it's going to be a day and time very soon that you're going to just be able to tell it to do something, and it's going to know all the steps that need to be done.
Yeah, we're getting closer and closer every day. I mean, right now the big shift has been towards like agentic AI because although you would want something that you just kind of like what we do with ChatGPT, we just ask it questions, right? And we expect it to give us all the answers and be the know-all, be all. But I think you would agree with this, but a lot of people have experienced that a lot of times if you try to make an AI agent that's like too complex and handling too many things, it tends to do a lot worse. So
Right.
oftentimes, especially in the agentic space, you definitely want them to be a lot more specialized with specific tasks, right?
Sounds like humans,
So,
doesn't it?
right, exactly. And that's why, it's funny how you mentioned that too, because I was going to bring this up. It's this is where there's sort of like two sides where there's some people who are afraid and not as receptive to AI because they're afraid that it's going to replace jobs. And, to be quite candid, like it probably will replace some jobs. But on the other side, I think it's also creating new jobs, right? Prompt engineers, that didn't exist before, right? Prompt
Right.
engineering didn't exist before. So there's a lot of new jobs that are also being created. And on top of that, it's also empowering a lot of people to do a lot more with their time, right? The efficiency of it.
Right. I mean, I could see
Yeah.
where one person leveraging AI nowadays, I'm sure everyone's heard this spoken about, is you'll have the first $1 trillion company created with a single person leveraging
Hmm.
AI. And while that may be extreme, you can certainly see the opportunity that's becoming available to leverage AI and capacities to streamline all workflow and just really have the human deciding on their approach that, what market do they want to go into and just unleash AI in that area. But yeah, I mean, like you say, it not only streamlines what we're currently doing, is it does empower small groups of people to start a business and so much easier. And I
Hmm.
mean, we're a small team, but we're already able to leverage AI in manners that have just allowed us to do so much more than we were in the past. I mean, drastically more. And at the same time, save time on all of this. So you're leveraging your time, your effort is a lot of times just doing a better job in some capacity. I know for me in programming, writing emails, all of these little things that I've been able to do successfully, but now I can do it with a fraction of the time.
Much
So,
quicker. Yeah.
yeah,
Like you
yeah,
could be sending out, five times the amount of emails or writing five times the speed that you're writing before. And even the grammar, like it actually helps you with the grammar as well. We already had things like Grammarly, but it's getting better and better in terms of like copywriting for your ads and,
right.
your marketing outreach. And, it's getting
Email
to the point.
replies is something simple that it just nails so fast.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
again, going back to my specific, where it really drastically saves me time is my coding. I mean, I can have it code up, a simple function and it's ready to use because I tell it what input I want to give it. I can copy that function right into my code, and most of the time it's ready to go. It may need a little tweak, but that's how effective it is in the programming aspect. And that's
Mhm.
just only allowing it to do a little bit of it, really.
Yeah, it's doing like a lot of times we say it does like 80% of what you would call like the grunt work. And then the
Right.
20% is like that human oversight, just to make sure that, everything looks square, right? So, yeah, I mean that can be applied to pretty much everything that we do on a day to day, right? Even the email, like sometimes it might say something that, no, this might not sound like me. So you do a little bit of oversight and look at it and make a tweak here and there, but it's significantly faster, right? Than you manually typing it out, thinking about it, typing it out again, thinking about it. So, yeah. And then I guess it sounds like things are working pretty well in terms of how you're leveraging it today with your teams. I guess what are some KPIs or metrics that you are like super focused on as of late?
Right now, our core focus has been to engage deeper into various marketing tactics since we've never had a lot of effort in that area, sadly. That's we're behind the curve here. We're really having to educate the market of who we are, that we've been doing this for 25 years and that we're bringing a new approach to it. So for us, our KPMs is going to be really how many people are we talking to? Because for us, a sale, you got to start with the introduction, and our sales process is so simple in a manner and fast and really high rates of success on the sales. So it's just really a matter of reaching the audience. So for us, the KPM is truly the conversations, the amount of conversations we're having. And we are approaching that with a multi-pronged approach between the different ads out there, Google and LinkedIn. We're still trying to do that because we know it can still have some prominent placement. At the same time, video, as we've already covered, we are realizing that we have to have more video front and center covering the very unique pieces of us. And that's on our website and our social, everywhere, again. But then as far as the outreach, because this is ultimately where we know we have a leverage point with using AI, with using these, this more modern approach of getting in front of people. That's where we are trying to engage as much as possible, but it's still fairly new for us that we are still learning, and we've already kind of leaned onto that learning process. But that's ultimately where I feel the KPMs are really going to shine because it's taking so much less of our effort. So that's what I'm having to reflect on is remember the work is up front. Once you get the things set up and have a proven workflow here, then you put it in automation mode. I mean, it's pretty much automated to start with in a lot of capacity, but again, finding that right message, those right approaches.
Right.
But that's the KPM, right? That's where you're really ultimately reducing your time involved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I'm actually curious because you hit it. I think like these days with all of the tools and technologies available to us, you're kind of touching on the volume side of things, right? You're able to outreach to a significantly larger volume than in the past before we typically couldn't, right? So this is, outreach to thousands of hundreds of thousands potentially that we can do. But yeah, you touched on the very important thing. It's the messaging. So I think oftentimes the message resonance is what's very important and critical, and whether or not, and timing has a lot to do with it too.
That's
So
right.
what we've seen as far as like our insights with others we've actually worked with as well is you have to constantly test your messaging and then constantly see which variants are doing well versus which variants aren't doing well. And oftentimes what ends up happening is it could also all just be timing. The timing of one variant might just be working well at the moment, but then the other one does better, a month from now. So it's always shifting and always changing. So that's one of the things where the human element still needs to be there, where yeah, the tool can blast a ton of different variations that you can test and like actually see how they're performing. But then a human still has to be there in terms of the strategy of, hey, I think we need to turn this variant off versus use this variant because it's performing a lot better at this time.
Right.
And then, constantly evolving that. I'm sure you get hundreds of emails every single day with people trying to sell you something, right?
That's
So
right.
how do you change the messaging in a way where you're differentiating yourself from the hundreds of emails that are landing on the inboxes, right?
You,
So
you bring up a critical piece for us is again, with our changing our business model and our product, if we relied on the standard approach, we would have looked and sounded just like all of our competition, where we knew the changes that we had implemented, we had to talk different. We literally spent, I'd say, a good quarter, 2 quarters just reflecting on exactly how are we different and going through pinpointing one piece after another to where we had such a compelling story that we can now tell in comparison to all of our other competition. This was a huge self-reflection moment that allowed us to change all of that narrative around the way we speak in all of our messaging. Sadly, we couldn't reflect on it until we really kind of took a step back and said, okay, how are we different? What's different here? And when we compiled this list and we put it directly against what our competition is saying, it looks like two different entirely businesses. I mean, because the business model itself is what's different. That's how we change. Even though we service the same clients in the same capacity, the business model couldn't be further apart. And then if, like say, if we would have just unleashed AI, it may or may not have been able to really pinpoint some of these talking points. Now, when we give it, a bullet list of what we want to include in our message, now it brings up a whole different way to approach. And it's all in the self-reflection that we had to do to really bring out that underlying story. And that's really been the biggest change for us in our marketing piece was a self-reflection.
Yeah, no, that's huge because I think that's where oftentimes where people get hung up. It's that unique value proposition is in marketing terms, right? Whether or not you have that compelling value proposition that is different from everyone else. That's like probably 50% of it, right? It's
Right.
it's at least 50% of it. And then the other 50% could be the infra on how you're actually sending, whether or not you're hitting the spam filters, whether you're hitting their primary inboxes. Like that's the other half, as well as whether or not you're prospecting the right people too, right? So yeah, it's like a culmination of all of that is what marketing agencies are designed to solve, right?
That's
So
it.
it's great that you already like, are figuring things out, which is like honestly the biggest and most challenging thing for most companies, I would say. Because oftentimes what you hear, especially with a lot of, I guess, smaller to medium-sized businesses that are competing with some of these larger companies that might be their competition as well, is they kind of say it in a way where, oh, we could either do it cheaper or, it tends to be always with the cost, but they never tend to really direct it in a way where it's like, what is that unique value that you're giving me comparatively to all of your competitors? And that's usually, I would say, from hundreds of people we've talked to, that's always like where they're kind of questioning, like, that's a good point. I'm not really sure, right? But it's great that you identified it now, even though you said it's a little bit later. It's better now than never, right? So
That's right. That's right.
yeah. Hmm.
And with it being the foundation of every message, like I say, even if you land in an inbox, if your message isn't right, it can fall
Hmm.
flat.
Exactly.
Even if you're getting it to the right person, if the message isn't right, it can fall flat. So I think, yeah, all those pieces are critical. But for us, we did the deep dive first to build our website and reflect it first, because that's the ultimate starting point. And then now we're able to carry that on to every other piece of our marketing tactics, whether it be actually speaking to someone in sales or emails or presentations, different things like that, sponsors in conferences. We're able to really go in there and have a uniqueness. I just can't stress that part of it enough is they find the value add. Everything has to have a value. That's what's going to command the money. We're all in this together to make money. Every business is. And to find that value that you're able to bring is ultimately the help. How are you helping? So we were able to quickly identify the help, and then how are we helping uniquely, and then carry it on through. And yeah, I think that's fundamental for any starting point for marketing.
For sure. I guess kind of thinking about it for your future outlook with B2I. I guess if we were to say like 6 to 12 months from now, what are some of your like big goals or growth targets? Or where would you say is like your future outlook that you're kind of placing your bets on? Like what's sort of the big goal for you?
Oh wow, that's a good question, and in a unique approach. I would say right now our biggest goal is just to be recognized as somebody unique in this space. Truly what we're striving to do with our marketing is our objective in our goals and such, that because we're just getting lumped with other providers that really don't provide a comparative service. Once that goal is met of how we're seen as different, then our perspective is realized on how it's, to me, a better way to do this, because we are bringing more power to the people that want that control over the website, that want to be able to guide that message. Or it may just be that if they're wanting that turnkey solution, which we still offer, then the way we approach that is also different. It's still less frustration around it. So it's just being seen as the to truly reflect the advantages that we bring, that our business model brings, that our offering brings. And I think once that's reflected, and you know, the general audience of these publicly traded companies realize how we're doing this is so unique and added an advantage, I believe. I think that, you know, our sales is going to immediately be reflected. And I think, you know, I think the word on the street is going to be reflected too. I think it's going to be like, hey, if you haven't seen B2Y, they allow you to do all the things you've ever wanted to do with managing this content or getting things done in the way that you want to do them, because there's a lot of advantages. So yeah, that's the best way I can address that at this time, because it
Yeah.
is kind of vague.
Right. Yeah, so it almost sounds like the goal is really to establish yourself as the authority figure in this space, right? I guess to kind of summarize, really just being that thought leader as well as the authority in terms of like the IR space. I
Right.
guess
Our
if
website.
right, what do you feel like is kind of preventing you to actually be that authority figure?
Time, educating people, you know, giving them the understanding of how we are different.
Hmm.
Right now,
And
that's really what we're up against.
gotcha. Yeah, and then I guess to kind of achieve that ambitious goal of being that authority figure, and then we also have like the time aspect of it where you're kind of running into an issue where you're building up that or spending the time to get that knowledge out there. What sort of steps are you kind of taking? Like, are you, I guess, what types of ideas have you come up with in terms of how you want to get that message out there?
Some of it is editorial articles. That's just something that was unique that we've started engaging. We hadn't really thought about too much until the opportunity presented. Media is changing. You can even get on TV nowadays quite easy compared to the, you know, historical. It was much more cost prohibitive. I'm not saying that we're going to go that route, but the editorial piece was much more affordable than we ever really believed it would be. And we're talking, you know, national syndicated channels of being able to be out there. We've always approached press releases because in the industry that we facilitate, that's the way they put out their content.
Mhm.
You know, there's a lot to be said for press releases because it's search engine optimized, usually so you're immediately found, whether it be on your website or on whoever it is you did it through. There's usually some effort there to help in that capacity. Podcast. I mean, that's why we're here today, is to try to just get the message out, and whether our audience may or may not, you know, really engage in our services. The main thing is just to have that understanding, and it gives us the opportunity to, you know, get the message of communicating the message a little more easy for us to talk about it, because, you know, we're all so apprehensive to do video. And, you know, this is, you know, my second or third, fourth time, maybe, you know, somewhere around there. So this is an engagement that I'm able to learn from and grow from this opportunity and get better at telling our story. But more importantly is now we are able to use this, leverage this piece of media to tell the story again, even further,
Mhm.
bring these unique aspects into the world. So maybe our story can help others, but also you never know where somebody might hear it and be able to reference it to someone else. You just never
Mhm.
know.
Right. Yeah, we kind of talked about this, how content, surprisingly, right? And this is something that Bill Gates has always said, right? Content is king, and that's been since like early 2000s. Even if we don't actually hit the intended audience at times when we, broadcast or publish these episodes or any type of content, really, there's always a chance that it actually does spread to the right people, right? So it's just another medium. Although, you're using a ton of different angles in terms of outreach, and this is just one of them, right? And it's also great in terms of using as like a knowledge base too, without having a dictionary in your website, right? So this is like, I guess, a form of how, like you say, tell your story but in a more digestible manner versus someone having to go and search you up and find your website and then find the editorial and having to read through it. And even with these like video content, you could always, when you do post it, you could always link back to those pieces as well, right? So yeah, I mean, I definitely it resonates with me because that's exactly why, we do the podcast as well. And I think you're also very interested in starting your own podcast to kind of
That's right.
broadcast that message. Yep. Yeah. No.
I mean, really, speaking to video in general, we've already touched on this a couple of times, but one of my objectives in the very near future, I mean, this year, is going to be to have a video on every webpage of our corporate website. I feel that the time is way overdue. I'm surprised more companies haven't already done this. To me, it's almost a lack of understanding of appeal because no one wants to read a website anymore. I
Mhm.
mean, how many times have you just looked at a website and see how much content is it, and you're just trying to find a summary of it anywhere? I think AI is going to help with that. I think either it producing it itself or we've seen the tools that you can generate a video, it can dub over with AI voice, take out the ums, take out the spaces, the long pause, streamline that, just simplify the production of this videos. I think the time is way overdue to have a video website
Mhm.
and that be the core message or at least be reflected that we're seen as technology experts at B2I because again, we've leveraged technology from way back and we want to continue being seen that way. And we feel that if we have a video on every website, I know it's the simplest thing ever to say, but when you think of how many people are doing it again, how many companies do you see? None hardly have this. And it's such a simple way to bring that message out there. Again, leveraging the videos for SEO. Yeah, every video you put on YouTube is going to help with SEO. You look at all of how all this little tangled web of content comes into play, whether it's being perception of people seeing you as being forward thinking, whether it being used for SEO or just conveying a message. Lots of multiple uses here. And I think that the more people get outside of looking at the way things are routinely done and approached and try to think, okay, how can I leverage today's technology and be seen different, even do things better, easier, faster, produce content? Yeah, I think it's going to serve everyone well. I mean, I know I would rather go on a website and listen to videos any day than trying to read through some of them.
Hmm. Yeah, and if it's a testament to like how the average person these days is consuming information, I mean, audiobooks, right? That wasn't really a thing, but now it's like probably one of the more popular ways to ingest like books and information too,
It actually goes
right?
deeper. Now we don't have time to read it or listen to an audiobook. Now there's another service that summarizes audiobooks and gives you the synopsis, all the meat and potatoes right out of it without having to listen to the whole thing. So
Right.
it just underscores the time issue, the content simplicity of consumption.
Yeah, and then I guess Joe, from for the audience, if there was one message or takeaway you want them to have from today's episode, what would you tell them?
Wow. To summarize everything we spoke here, is really think outside the box. Don't try to don't try to just follow the norm because looking at innovation in a little different way can serve you. You can build an entire business on it and be seen completely different because you're able to approach business in a different way. It doesn't matter what business it is, that innovation component, it just can't be underscored enough.
Mhm. Yeah, and then also constantly being able to adapt to the times changing, right?
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. The adaptability, as I've mentioned, that was really our latest, the trend that we were able to kind of pick up on of need. Not that it was a trend everyone was doing, but the trend need was there. And we were able to pivot our company on that and capitalize and tell a different story. So absolutely.
Mhm. Yeah, Joe, no, thank you again so much for, this super insightful conversation. And then I guess before we wrap up for today's episode, is there anything else you would like to share with listeners?
We've covered a lot. I don't know that I could add anything at the end here that I could really bring any more value currently. But yeah, it's been such a pleasure. I do appreciate the opportunity to speak and to tell our story and hopefully to give some hope and to others and maybe perspective on doing things a little differently and how it can change your entire business and really carve you out into something unique.
Yeah. So for listeners today, B2I Technologies is building trusted IR websites and real-time data widgets and plugins, pairing automation with control so teams can publish fast without sacrificing compliance, brand, or SEO. So thank you again, Joe, for all of the insightful context that you've kind of provided for us and what your teams are doing. And then for listeners who do want to learn more and also to follow what Joe and his team are up to next, or even to request B2I's complimentary IR website review, you can visit b2itech.com. Any other plugs you want to mention there, Joe? Maybe your socials, for example, that you want followers to look out for?
We're prominently on LinkedIn. Of course, we're on all the socials, but LinkedIn we have a little better presence there. So yeah, that would be the one that we're really pushing the most.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So again, that's b2itech.com as well as their LinkedIn page for B2I Technologies. Thank you, listeners, for all for tuning in. My name is Aaron Park. This has been Industry Innovators. And if you've enjoyed today's episode, please follow, rate, and share. And we'll see you all next time.